It looked like any other state ceremony: cars at the gates, flags on the hoods, leather folders behind polished glass. The sun beat down on the meticulously manicured lawns of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, casting long shadows that stretched across the polished stone. Dignitaries stepped out of black sedans, their movements measured and deliberate, their faces unreadable masks of diplomatic neutrality. Every detail was choreographed to project an image of routine, of business as usual. The guards, in their crisp ceremonial uniforms, stood with an almost statuesque stillness, their eyes scanning the horizon. This was the theatre of statecraft, a performance meant to signify order and predictability in a region often defined by its opposite. But this was no ordinary day. Beneath the surface of protocol and pleasantries, something fundamental was shifting. The air itself seemed charged with unspoken significance, a silent hum of anticipation that the polished proceedings could not entirely conceal. The handshakes were a little firmer, the glances held a fraction of a second longer. Each signature on the documents waiting inside was more than just ink on paper. It was a declaration, a severing of old ties and the forging of new ones. This gathering was not about maintaining the status quo. It was about dismantling it, piece by piece, right under the world's unassuming gaze. An old order was being quietly but decisively challenged. If you looked closer, you'd see it wasn't Burkina Faso entering the world. It was the world entering Burkina Faso. Not as a supplicant, not as a recipient of aid or a subject of international concern, but as a destination, a center of gravity. Representatives from 8 sovereign nations had not come to dictate terms or offer conditional support. They had come to listen, to align, to pledge their futures to a vision being articulated from this very spot. The traditional power dynamics, where influence flowed from global capitals into Africa, were being inverted. Today, the continent was generating its own magnetic field, and its pull was undeniable. This was the quiet genesis of a new axis of power, born not in the grand halls of the United Nations or the opulent chambers of Western governments, but here, in the heart of West Africa. It was a moment that would not make the front pages of global newspapers tomorrow, yet its tremors would be felt for years to come. The leather folders contained more than agreements. They held the blueprint for a different future, one where African nations would define their own path, on their own terms. The world was about to be reminded that history is not a straight line, and that new leaders emerge when old certainties crumble. The date was June 26th, a day etched into modern African history. The ceremony was deliberately understated, shielded from the prying eyes of international media. There was a quiet, solemn intensity to the proceedings. Leaders from Mali, Niger, Guinea, and 4 other nations arrived with a shared sense of purpose. They were architects of a nascent rebellion against a post-colonial order. The 8 nations represented a contiguous block of strategic importance. Their signatures on the accord were a collective act of defiance, a pledge of mutual defense, and a commitment to a shared political destiny. The ink was still drying, but the lines had already been redrawn. Layers of security sealed off the entire presidential compound. The protocol itself was a masterpiece of secrecy and misdirection. It was a silent coup against the established geopolitical order. Inside the room, the atmosphere was thick. Around the table sat the men who would decide the future of millions. Captain Ibrahim Traoré presided not as a dictator, but as a first among equals. Each leader spoke of shared grievance and collective aspiration. The delegate from Mali spoke of the fight against insurgents. Niger's envoy detailed the economic strangulation imposed by external sanctions. From Guinea came stories of political interference. This was more than a meeting. It was a council of war. What distinguished this meeting was the spirit of compromise, that their individual weaknesses could be forged into a collective strength. As the final signatures were affixed to the charter, a quiet sense of solidarity settled over the room. They were the founding members of the Alliance of Sahel states. They were bound by a secret pact and the knowledge that they would face the world as a united front. The meeting was over, but the revolution had just begun. The alliance was a strategic constellation of nations seeking a new path. At its core were the 3 founding members of the Alliance of Sahel states: Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These nations form a contiguous belt across the heart of the Sahel. The circle expanded to include Guinea. This was about creating a self-sufficient economic and logistical corridor, free from the chokeholds of the old order. The other 4 nations that completed the 8-member pact remain a closely guarded secret. What unites these 8 nations is a powerful cocktail of disillusionment and aspiration. This system manifests as economic dependency, political interference, and security partnerships that prioritize foreign interests over African lives. This bloc is their collective answer, a declaration that they will no longer accept this reality. These 8 nations are bound by shared historical pain and contemporary struggle against a global system they feel is rigged against them. For Mali and Niger, a security crisis spiraling despite Western military presence. Guinea felt unfairly targeted after their coup. They saw in Burkina Faso a nation willing to stand firm against external condemnation. Economically, exploitation connects these partners, rich in resources, yet their people remain poor. They believe the global trade extracts raw materials cheaply while selling finished goods at a premium. This alliance is an economic pact to control their mineral wealth and trade on their own terms. Ultimately, these nations share a quest for dignity and sovereignty. Traoré articulated a frustration simmering for decades. The alliance is a defiant attempt to reclaim their narrative and resources. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has become the embodiment of a continent's resurgent desire for self-determination. His words are direct, unvarnished, and resonate deeply with a population weary of empty promises. His military fatigues and red beret are a visual rejection of the suited, Western-educated leaders of the past. Traoré's speeches call out former colonial powers for decades of exploitation. He frames the struggle against jihadist groups as a war for total liberation. Traoré invokes the spirit of Pan-African heroes like Thomas Sankara. He presents himself as a continental leader, fighting on behalf of all Africans. Traoré offers a simple truth that Africa's problems require African solutions, defined by Africans, for the benefit of Africans. The power of the Traoré factor is most visible not in presidential palaces, but on the streets. His image has become a potent symbol of resistance and hope, spreading virally across the Sahel and beyond. In the bustling markets of Ouagadougou, his face adorns t-shirts, keychains, and stickers. He is not just a leader, he is a brand, a revolutionary icon for a new age. Murals depicting him in heroic poses, often alongside Thomas Sankara, are painted on city walls in Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey. These are not state-sponsored propaganda pieces. They are organic expressions of popular support, a grassroots movement anointing him as their champion. This street art is the visual manifestation of a political awakening, turning urban landscapes into galleries of defiance. The slogans that accompany these images are just as powerful. Chants of La Patrie ou la Mort, Nous vaincrons, the fatherland or death we will overcome, a famous refrain of Sankara's, echo through massive public rallies. This phrase has been revitalized, becoming the rallying cry for this new movement. It encapsulates the binary choice that Traoré presents to his people, a fight to the end for true sovereignty or a return to the slow death of subjugation. This stark, uncompromising language galvanizes his supporters, creating an incredible sense of urgency and collective purpose. It transforms political alignment into a sacred duty, a fight for the very soul of their nations. His anti-Western stance is a cornerstone of this symbolic power. Every action, from expelling the French ambassador to seeking new security partnerships with nations like Russia, is framed as a step toward reclaiming national honor. These moves are immensely popular, seen as concrete proof that his rhetoric is matched by action. He has skillfully tapped into a deep reservoir of anti-colonial sentiment, turning decades of perceived slights and humiliations into political fuel. For many, his defiance is cathartic, a public rejection of a world order they feel has never served their interests. He isn't just changing policy, he is restoring a sense of pride that had been eroded over generations. This carefully cultivated image, the soldier-philosopher, the heir to Sankara, the fearless anti-imperialist, is what gives him the authority to lead this emerging bloc. Other leaders align with him not just for strategic reasons, but because he offers them a blueprint for popular legitimacy. By adopting his rhetoric and standing with him, they too can tap into this powerful current of Pan-African sentiment. Traoré has become more than a man. He is a symbol, a focal point for the hopes of millions. And in a region searching for a new direction, that symbolism is the most powerful political force of all. This coalition emerged from a perfect storm of crises. Escalating instability and collapsing faith in old ways fueled this radical break. For years, the Sahel had been sinking deeper into a security quagmire. The international response, led by France's Operation Barkhane, failed to deliver security. Populations felt the foreign presence was ineffective, creating problems and disrespecting sovereignty. Frustration curdled into anger, fueling military coups. The new military leaders argued for an African-led approach. The expulsion of French forces reshaped the region. This was a point of no return, a declaration of independence. By severing ties, these nations found unity in defiance, creating the alliance. The failure of foreign intervention created conditions for a homegrown anti-Western bloc. The vacuum offered leaders like Traoré a different vision. The emergence of the Alliance of Sahel states was accelerated by the cracking of the old regional order. For decades, ECOWAS, backed by Western powers, acted as the region's institutional gatekeeper. However, the new military-led governments in the Sahel viewed ECOWAS as a tool of external interests. Following coups in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, ECOWAS responded with sanctions. Instead, the sanctions galvanized public opinion behind the new leaders. In early 2024, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger announced their withdrawal from ECOWAS. The Alliance of Sahel states was now positioned as an alternative to the old guard. They are actively dismantling the old, betting that other nations will see their alliance as the vanguard of a new African unity. The rise of the Traoré-led bloc has been met with a deafening silence in Paris, Brussels, and Washington. The response has been one of quiet observation, of carefully worded diplomatic briefs, and of closed-door meetings. This silence is a symptom of deep-seated anxiety and strategic paralysis. For decades, the West has operated in this region with a sense of entitlement, now evaporated. The fear is about the potential loss of influence over a region of immense strategic importance and critical natural resources. Beneath the geopolitical concerns lies a more tangible fear: the loss of access to resources. For Western economies, this raises the specter of supply chain disruptions and a future where they must compete with rivals. This silence is therefore a strategy in itself. Western policymakers are forced to watch as a new axis forms, one that was built specifically to challenge their long-held dominance. Western policymakers behind closed doors have abandoned hopes of reversing the AES bloc's rise, the new strategy containment. The West now seeks to halt the alliance's influence, not roll it back. Focus shifts to shoring up ties with coastal allies like Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal, hoping to build a buffer against the Sahel's new assertiveness. Reports from Washington and London echo a new rhetoric: partnership, respect, and mutual benefit, an implicit admission that the old playbook has failed. The West tries to rebrand itself as a better partner, but decades of mistrust linger. Meanwhile, Russia and China offer alternatives with fewer strings attached, making Western offers less attractive. The global marketplace for partnerships is crowded. The West is no longer the only game in town. Containment is risky. The ideas of sovereignty and self-reliance, championed by Traoré, are spreading fast. These concepts resonate across Africa, challenging the post-colonial order. The West faces the real possibility of a continent-wide realignment. This is not just a regional shift. It could reshape global power for the 21st century. The silence in Western capitals is the sound of an old order fearing its own obsolescence. The AES bloc's true power may lie in economic transformation, not just politics. Their charter envisions a unified trade zone, eliminating tariffs and boosting intra-regional commerce. The goal: build resilience by trading within, reducing dependence on volatile global markets. Ambitious infrastructure projects, railways and highways linking landlocked states to the Atlantic, are on the table. These connections would lower trade costs and symbolize real independence. The bloc plans to harmonize agricultural and industrial policies, creating complementary economies and regional value chains. The aim: process their own resources, manufacture goods, and create a vast consumer market. This challenges the old model of exporting raw materials for little return. If successful, the AES could attract global investment and ignite a cycle of growth. The vision: not just survival, but prosperity on their own terms. The AES alliance fuses military strength with control over strategic minerals. Collective defense is central. An attack on one is an attack on all. Joint operations and training aim to create a security force tailored to local threats. Securing resources, gold, uranium, bauxite, is now an African priority, not a foreign one. The new doctrine: African soldiers protect African wealth for African people. This unity gives the bloc leverage in global negotiations over mineral access. Controlling key resources like uranium means influence over global energy and politics. The bloc seeks fairer trade, technology, and investment on their terms. Security and prosperity are intertwined. Stability could finally take root. The AES aims to transform the Sahel from a problem into a power. On the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey, the AES bloc is a lived reality, not just a headline. For many, especially the youth, it's a moment of hope, a break from a painful past. Pro-government rallies are filled with genuine pride and belief in an African-led future. Supporters see the hardships of sanctions as a price worth paying for sovereignty. Yet, beneath the optimism, there are whispers of doubt and anxiety. Some fear alienating Western partners could bring isolation and economic pain. Others question if military rule can deliver lasting prosperity or just new forms of control. The region stands at a crossroads, caught between hope and uncertainty. The future feels both promising and perilous. Ordinary voices reflect a continent wrestling with its destiny. The dream of a sovereign Sahel inspires millions, but critics warn of deep cracks beneath the surface. The alliance, born in secrecy and speed, may lack the institutions and legitimacy for long-term survival. Unity is strong now, but it's unity against a common foe. True tests lie ahead. Internal divisions, rivalries, and competing interests could threaten cohesion. Leadership disputes and resource sharing may spark conflict without trusted frameworks. Infrastructure remains a massive hurdle. Roads, power, and connectivity are lacking. Funding from new partners like Russia or China comes with its own risks. The challenge: build sovereignty without falling into new dependencies. Is Traoré ready to lead a movement, not just a coup? Military regimes must prove they can govern, not just revolt. Turning the dream into reality is the region's greatest test yet. As the West watches, other global powers view the emergence of the Traoré-led bloc with keen interest. In Moscow, Beijing, and within BRICS, the alliance of Sahel states is seen as a welcome development towards a multipolar world. These powers see sovereign nations breaking free from the Western sphere of influence and seeking new partnerships. Russia has been swift to capitalize on the security vacuum left by departing French forces, offering security assistance without political conditions. For Russia, this is a strategic victory, gaining a foothold and chipping away at Western dominance. China views the bloc through an economic lens, seeing immense opportunity. A stable, unified bloc controlling vast mineral resources is an attractive partner for its Belt and Road Initiative. China's policy of non-interference allows it to forge powerful economic partnerships. The broader BRICS group views the AES as a natural ally in building an alternative to the Western-dominated system. The AES will find willing and powerful friends among the nations building a new world order. Can Burkina Faso handle the weight of this new leadership role? Can Captain Ibrahim Traoré pilot this alliance through global politics? The vision is powerful: sovereignty, unity, and prosperity. The path is fraught with peril, turning shared grievance into a shared reality. The bloc is a gamble where the stakes are the future of a region. It signals a new era of African agency. It has altered the conversation, proving that new centers of power can emerge. The answer will shape the destiny of a continent. The next chapter is yet to be written. This is Inside Africa.